Four top scorers in this year's Diploma of Secondary Education examination. The city may see the approach of another tropical storm next week. And China's senior diplomat Wang Yi meets U.S. climate envoy John Kerry in Beijing. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Results of the Diploma of Secondary Education examination, also known as DSE, will be out tomorrow. This year, around 42% of candidates, or 17,000 students, have met the basic university entrance requirement in the city. Only 4 students have managed to attain the top grade, 5-star star, in 7 subjects. That's the fewest number of DSE top scorers in recent years. Sharon Tang has details.
The academic path for some 42,000 students are in the hands of the Examinations and Assessment Authority. This year, more than 17,000 candidates have achieved levels 3322 or above in 4 core subjects and level 2 or above in 1 elective. That paves the way for their admission to undergraduate programs at local universities. The best scenario is for candidates to get a total of 18 grade points in 5 subjects so they can secure a place at local universities. Nearly 60% of candidates have attained level 3 or above in Chinese language, a slight increase compared with last year. Over 53% of the candidates have attained level 3 or above in English language, more or less the same as last year. More than 80 and 90% of the candidates have achieved level 2 or above in mathematics and liberal studies, respectively. This year, 2 boys and 2 girls have scored 5 double stars in 7 subjects. That's the fewest number of candidates who have attained the top grades in 7 subjects in recent years, but the Examinations Authority begs to differ.
We have no evidence to show that, the top performers, the top students, actually less this year than last year. In fact, our data show that there are more people score high in DSE. We don't believe that the top students have left Hong Kong.
Meanwhile, an exam marker allegedly posted a confidential marking scheme on social media platform Xiaohongshu. The Examinations Authority stressed it is taking the case seriously.
It's a major violation of our rules governing the markers, because we don't know the exact the identity of the marker. So we can only report the case to police to follow up.
Wei said this is only an isolated and rare incident, adding the Examinations Authority will improve training for markers in future. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
All tropical cyclone warning signals were cancelled in Hong Kong and Macau this morning as Tropical Storm Talim moves further away from the region. As Mimo Singai reports, there is the possibility of another tropical cyclone edging closer to the Pearl River estuary early next week.
Thailand became the first typhoon with the number 8 warning signal to skirt the city this year. According to the observatory, the weather will improve in the next few days before turning extremely hot again. But the forecaster said a potential tropical cyclone is likely to form to the east of the Philippines in the next couple of days. That's after taking reference from a prediction generated by the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast.
It may enter the South China Sea and potentially edge closer to the coast of southern China early next week and develop into a stronger system. The movement and intensity of that potential tropical cyclone remain uncertain. Nevertheless, it is expected to bring strong winds, showers, and squall to Hong Kong. The intensity and the tracks of the potential tropical cyclones depends on the strength of the subtropical ridge and also the temperature of the seawater.
Yet, according to the U.S. Global Forecast System, another tropical cyclone will form in the South China Sea around the middle of next week. Experts say even the most advanced computer model can make a forecast that ends up in a 30-kilometer difference from the actual phenomenon and warn that they are just for reference. Mimos 9, TVB News.
Traffic from Hong Kong to the mainland via the Man Kam To border crossing will partially resume tomorrow. The checkpoint was closed to northbound traffic on July 9th because of a rare land subsidence incident. The surface in front of 3 cross-border booths sank, causing the roofs to bend. Shenzhen authorities said after repairs and assessment by professional bodies, inbound passenger vehicles, including private cars and coaches, will resume from 7 a.m. tomorrow. However, the return of cargo vehicles will be announced later. In Beijing, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry told senior Chinese officials that the United States and China could use climate cooperation to redefine their tense relationship and lead the way in tackling global warming. Premier Li Qiang pledged that Beijing can strengthen climate action with Washington. Sharon Tang has details.
On Sunday, a heat dome in the western United States brought temperatures in California's Death Valley to 56 degrees Celsius. The same day, China's northwestern Xinjiang region recorded an all-time high temperature of over 50 degrees Celsius. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry's 3-day visit to China is aimed at reviving climate cooperation between the world's top greenhouse gas emitters, and it coincides with waves of extreme weather across the planet. On Tuesday, Kerry told Premier Li Qiang that U.S. President Joe Biden is very committed to stability in China-U.S. relationship.
And so the imperative of our two countries coming together and working and showing the rest of the world how we can cooperate and begin to address this with the urgency it requires is incredible.
Earlier on Tuesday, Kerry met senior diplomat Wang Yi. Wang referred to Kerry as my old friend, saying they had worked together to solve a series of problems between both sides. Kerry also talked about their previous work, including Iran nuclear talks. Wang referred to President Xi Jinping's goal of building a shared future for humanity and said climate cooperation is an inevitable part of such efforts. He added China is willing to strengthen talks and search for better solutions with other nations. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Russia says it has repelled a Ukrainian drone attack on Crimea earlier today, a day after an attack on the Crimean bridge, which disrupted traffic. This as Moscow launched drone and missile attacks over the southern and eastern regions. Britain, meanwhile, has imposed further sanctions on Russia over accusations of forced relocation of Ukrainian children. Nazvi Karim has more.
Russia vowed to exact revenge for Monday's blast that took out the Crimea bridge, and these rocket-launching batteries could be just the start of Moscow's response. Overnight, Moscow launched raids over the southern and eastern regions, using drones and possibly ballistic missiles, according to Ukraine's armed forces. Parts of the regions of Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, which Russia claimed to have annexed last year, along with Mykolaiv, which offers Ukraine access to the Black Sea, have all been targeted. Air raid sirens were set off across the areas, and Ukraine said their air defense systems repelled several waves of Russian attacks. Russia, meanwhile, said they destroyed 17 Ukrainian drones and intercepted 11 using electronic warfare systems in Crimea earlier today. Moscow is also reportedly building a massive force for what Ukraine says could be an offensive on the Liman to Kupiansk sector cutting north to the east. Ukraine says 100,000 Russian troops are being backed by 900 tanks, 555 artillery systems and 370 multiple rocket systems. Attack on the link after last October's bomb blast. Ukraine has yet to comment on either of the attacks. Moscow said 2 people died in Monday's explosion, blamed on Ukrainian sea drones, adding that partial traffic has been restored on the bridge. Chairing a meeting on the incident, Russian President Vladimir Putin described it as a terrorist attack, saying Moscow has long stopped using the bridge for military-related transport. Meanwhile, Britain announced 13 new sanctions on Russia, including on its Education Minister Sergei Kravtsov, for what London says is the forced relocation of Ukrainian children, with the number believed to be as much as 700,000. In a statement, Britain's Foreign Secretary James Cleverly slammed Russia's attempt to destroy Ukrainian national identity and said the sanctions would involve freezing of assets and travel bans. Moscow described Britain's move as categorically unacceptable and legally null, adding that many of those being targeted actually helped rescue children. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
29 cats in Poland died of bird flu in what is thought to be a world first. Health experts believe the risk to humans is low. The World Health Organization said Polish vets informed them 45 cats had died suddenly last month. Tests showed 29 of them were found to have H5N1. It is unclear how so many got the disease, but the theory is the cats came into contact with wild birds. Scientists are worried diseases like bird flu could mutate from pets to humans, causing another pandemic. But since 2020, cases of bird flu in humans have been low and very few people need hospital care. Still ahead, the leader of Thailand's Moving Forward Party says he is willing to slow the pace of reform if he's elected prime minister. Excessive bacterial count in one personal wet wipe sample tested by the Consumer Council. And final preparations for this year's Hong Kong Book Fair. Welcome back. Thailand's parliament will hold a second vote on a new prime minister on Wednesday. Move Forward Party leader Pita Limjaroenrat will make another bid for the post after being rebuffed last week by the country's royalists and military establishment. Now, Pita said he is willing to slow the pace of reform if he forms a government, but he will not retreat from a plan to amend a law that prohibits royal insults. In an interview with Reuters, the 42-year-old said Thailand has entered a different era with a public hankering for change. In last week's vote, Pita failed to win the required backing of more than half of the legislature. He said if there is no substantial improvement in support for him in the upcoming vote, he will let the second largest party in the coalition try to win the prime minister's post. That would mean the Puthai Party, which is linked to former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. The UN has criticized Russia for bringing an end to a deal that had allowed Ukraine to export grain via Turkey. Moscow says if the parties involved cut a better deal for the distribution of Russian wheat, it might reconsider giving the shipments safe passage. David Garrett reports.
The TQ Samson, the last grain ship to leave Ukraine. For a year under a UN-Turkey brokered deal, Ukraine has been exporting grain through the Black Sea via Istanbul. Now Russia has terminated the deal. It will no longer guarantee safe passage unless obstacles to exporting its own food and fertilizer are lifted. UN inspectors could be seen climbing onto the ship to carry out checks. Moscow's cancellation brought consternation from the top of the organisation.
I deeply regret the decision by the Russian Federation to terminate the implementation of the Black Sea Initiative, including the withdrawal of Russian security guarantees for navigation in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. This initiative has ensured the safe passage of over 32 million metric tons of food commodities. Our goal must continue to be advancing global food security and global food price stability. These will remain the focus of my efforts, taking into account the rise in human suffering that will inevitably result from today's decision.
The World Food Programme has bought more than 80% of its wheat from Ukraine. Somalia has been one of the beneficiaries of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. It has helped keep prices lower. Russia is accused of trying to influence poorer countries to side with it.
I think it's unfortunate that we use and we can use food as a tactic, as a political tactic, as a military tactic, which it should not be used.
Ukraine's president took a swipe at Russia, saying the Kremlin is blackmailing the world over food supplies. Volodymyr Zelensky said Moscow think they can decide if there will be food in Egypt, Sudan, Yemen, Bangladesh, China or India. In heated exchanges at the UN, Russia set out its position at the Security Council. Deputy Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky said there has been no progress in Russia's demands for improved conditions for its exports. Germany, Poland and Ukraine hit back.
I call on all UN member states to firmly demand that Russia resume its participation in the deal in good faith and stop its Hunger Games.
China's Deputy Permanent Representative Geng Shuang said he hoped the transportation of the grain can continue through dialogue and consultation. Speaking in Istanbul, Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who brokered the original agreement, believes his friend Vladimir Putin wants the humanitarian grain bridge to continue. Erdogan hopes to strike a new deal. David Garrett, TVB News.
50 South American and Caribbean leaders have been invited to a major summit at the EU in Brussels as Europe tries to revive relations. The CELAC group of Latin American and Caribbean states are keen to do business, but many in the traveling party disagree with Europe over the war in Ukraine. The EU is a backer of Ukraine, but some countries in CELAC side with Russia or take a neutral stance. The last summit between the two blocs was 8 years ago. Many Latin American countries have colonial ties to the likes of Spain and Portugal. Although they have a shared history and language, the relationship can be strained. European countries have agreed to invest 45 billion euros in South and Central America as Brussels tries to move away from a reliance on raw materials from Asia. The EU is the biggest foreign investor in Latin America, but China has become the region's largest trading partner. And back at home, the Consumer Council tested 20 personal care wet wipes that are on the market. In one sample, they found the total bacterial count exceeded the mainland hygienic standard by almost 500 times. Memo Sangai reports.
Nowadays, a packet of personal care wet wipes can be found in most people's bags. Still, there may be hidden issues. After testing 20 commonly seen models of wet wipes on the market, the Consumer Council discovered the bacterial count on this Japanese brand goes way beyond the upper limit set by the China hygienic standard for disposable sanitary products, 100,000 CFU per gram. The Council says such wet wipes threaten different health risks to individuals with weak immunity.
Like gastroenteritis, symptoms like swollen throat and fever, and even conjunctivitis. The product with such high bacterial count is not satisfactory, and that is why they have already removed that from the shelf, and you could not buy this product anymore.
This Manning's brand of wet wipes were found to have a pH value of 3.2, which is below the minimum limit of China national standard, 3.5. The watchdog said the low pH value may cause skin irritation because the wet tissues can be too alkaline. The consumer watchdog reminds residents to consider the environment when buying and using wet wipes, as most wipes are made from non-eco-friendly material. The Council also tested 30 prepackaged preserved vegetables, including kimchi, sauerkraut, and gherkin. Over 85% of the samples were found to contain high sodium content. Moreover, while most samples were discovered to have impurities, including insect fragments, 3 models had an exceeding amount.
This is very difficult to notify by consumers because usually these are very small, and then usually you don't really see it. The recommendation for the consumer is that you go to the place where you got a good brand name, and also you will clean them, wash them, and you wash them with the boiling water, and then so you can move away some of the impurities.
Meanwhile, the watchdog tested 10 electric pressure cookers models and found all models to be energy savers, consuming less than 1 unit of electricity. However, the machines do not always use a shorter cooking time than conventional methods, as some cookers require time to build up and release pressure. Memos and I, TVB News.
This year's Hong Kong Book Fair opens at the Exhibition and Convention Center tomorrow and will run for 7 days. The Trade Development Council, or TDC, expects more visitors this time than last year. Exhibitors were busy setting up their stalls for the opening of the book fair. The TDC said about 780 exhibitors will participate in the fair and 2 other exhibitions, the Sports and Leisure Expo and World of Snacks. While the observatory says it's possible the city will see another typhoon next week, the organizer believes the total number of visitors will still be greater than the 850,000 recorded last year. United Nations Command says an American national has crossed the inter-Korean border into North Korea. It is thought the person would have been taken into North Korean custody. The individual was taking part in a tour to the joint security area and the border village in the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. South Korea's Dong Ilbo Daily, citing South Korea's army, identified him as Travis King. They say King is a U.S. Army soldier in the rank of private. This as a U.S. nuclear-armed ballistic missile submarine visits South Korea. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.